We are thrilled to have Little Pimsleur with us here today. Julia is a leader in the EdTech space and an incredible entrepreneur I was connected to this summer through my summer internship. This event is co-hosted with our Education Club and Women in Management Club. And yeah, we're excited to hear about Julia's journey. Her talk is titled Getting Off the Entrepreneur's Hamster Wheel. So please join me in welcoming Julia Pimsleur.
Thanks, Bridget, for having me, and Jen, who's not here, and Hannah, for all your help getting things together for today. It's really great to be back in New Haven. I am a Yale graduate, but not of the business school. I actually never set foot in the business school, so this is exciting for me to be here and get to know all of you. I was a film studies major with a minor in women's studies. So most of my life, I considered myself a creative person. And then a few years ago, I had a business idea. And in the last 5 years, I've learned to become a CEO, and I now consider myself a business person running a business with a creative idea at the center of it. But before I get started telling you about my Little Pim journey, I wanted to ask you guys a question. So how many people here either are already an entrepreneur or would like to be an entrepreneur? Just a quick show of hands. Wow. That's a lot of people. All right, great. Or who thinks they might work with entrepreneurs someday as a consultant, as an advisor, on the finance side? Terrific. All right, so I don't have to tell you that entrepreneurship is hot right now. There has never been a better time to want to be an entrepreneur and to raise money for new ventures. I was just reading the recent stats that in Q2 alone, VC investments were $2 billion in new startups. On the angel side, if you look at 2013, $25 billion invested in startups. A lot of money flowing around. The costs of starting a business have gotten smaller and smaller. And we have our own TV show, right? Silicon Alley. There are no women in it, but it will come. So, and you know, when you read the press, when you read Inc. and Forbes and Entrepreneur, and I read all those too, and I'm sure you get all these case studies about these huge successes, right, that we read about, where somebody raises $30 million of venture capital, and 5 years later they sell their company, and now they're sitting in their pajamas writing checks to young entrepreneurs, right? That's great. I read those stories too. And that is not what I'm going to talk about here today. I want to talk about the elephants in the room for entrepreneurship. Because really, entrepreneurship is about the ability to fail and continue on. And I know that the best definition that I've ever heard of an entrepreneur is someone who fails and gets up and keeps going. And that's very much what leads to success in the entrepreneurial world. So I'm going to tell you my story. I've had a lot of successes with Little Pim, but you can read about them online. We're not here to talk about those today. I want to just get real and talk about what it's really like to be running a business day to day and some of the hurdles that you face and have to get over. So I'm going to take you back to 2008, actually even further back, 2004. I was thinking about when my second son was born, 2008. But this all started with my first son, Emmett, when he was born in 2004. And I wanted to teach him French. I grew up bilingual in French and English. My father was Dr. Paul Pimsleur. He created the Pimsleur method, which is one of the leading methods for adults to learn a foreign language. It's sold all over the world. It's the 50th anniversary of the Pimsleur method this year. And so he helped my brother and me become bilingual in French by the age of 6. I don't even remember learning. It was a tremendous gift that my parents gave me. And it opened up so many doors for me. I got scholarships. I attended Yale on scholarship. I then moved to France and got an MFA at the French National Film School and worked there. I stayed there for 7 years, was able to work on international co-productions. And I could always point to that as the one thing that was sort of my ace in the bag, that I spoke French. It just gave me so much confidence and joy and access to a whole other culture. So when my son was born, it was a given I would want him to learn French. And I went out looking for some great program to start teaching him when he was a little baby, less than a year old. And I was really shocked to see that there was nothing on the market to teach little kids a foreign language. You may already know that 0 to 6 is the best time for kids to learn a second language. They're just sponges at that age, and you can learn really up to 3 languages without any difficulty and a perfect accent. So all these parents were missing this opportunity to teach their kids a second language. Well, for a little while, I was going around saying, someone really needs to do something about this. Somebody who is media savvy and somebody who understands languages and somebody who cares about kids. And eventually I realized that somebody was me. I was a filmmaker before. I graduated Yale and went right into having my own documentary film production company after I went to grad school. And for many years made films independently that we sold to HBO and Cinemax and PBS and places like that. Then I became a nonprofit fundraiser. So for 5 years, I helped move about $20 million in philanthropic donations into a variety of human rights and social justice causes. And now I was home on maternity leave with my little son, and this big idea came up. So I did not quit my day job and go raise $30 million. I started, drawing things on napkins and talking to anyone who would listen, and came up with the idea that the teacher should be something really fun and really cute that kids would love, and came up with the idea of a panda bear, in part because pandas are from China. See, we have a few people here who may know that, and I thought they were adorable, and also that right away kids learning another language would have a teacher who was an animal from another country. So right away they could start learning about China and get some global exposure. So the napkins led to a PowerPoint, led to working with some business students I found from Columbia Business School who were willing to work for yogurt parfaits. I used to take them out for yogurt parfaits on Saturdays while my husband watched our baby, and they had access to all this great research and data from Columbia. And bit by bit, I had a business plan and the ability to go out and raise the money. First, we just made a pilot, and we filmed 5 minutes of what I thought this could look like. Right away, I wanted to use video, in part because I was a filmmaker, but also because I wanted to create something that I could easily sell all over the world. And it's funny now that I am a business person, thinking back on this conversation with my husband, because I said, I want to teach languages to kids. I think this is my next thing. And he said, well, why don't you start schools? How about if you do Little Pim language schools, and you can have people bring them your kids, and you'll teach them? That's schools. I don't know. I've got to hire all these people, real estate. It just sounded very complicated. And I liked the idea of doing a video because I could do it right, and just like my parents had done, create a product that could sell for years and years. So that was the more scalable idea, or at least immediately scalable idea, although I did not have those terms at the time. So we decided to create this very high-end video series. Basically, Little Pim is a 120-minute video shot in high definition and then dubbed into multiple languages. So it's very easy to create new languages. It's very easy to distribute. It's not software. It's an MP4 file, so it can be played on any screen, any size, anywhere. And that opened up just a world of possibilities. But let's rewind back to the beginning. So I was still working my job as a fundraiser and doing Little Pim on the side. And eventually, it gained some traction. I hired someone I found off Craigslist to work 1 day a week and help us fulfill orders. We did create a little video series, just 3 videos. I raised about $430,000 from friends and family to create the video series and hire this person 1 day a week and build an inexpensive website, and we started selling. Well, we got some traction. By the end of a year of selling, we had maybe $160,000, but I still hadn't quit my day job. And there was a lot of great parent reaction. This was actually the first time that it was possible for a parent to be their child's first language tutor. Up until then, it was really just parents who spoke the language themselves or could afford to hire a nanny from another country or very expensive language classes. And when I looked around at what young moms were doing, I thought, well, gosh, kids are already watching, Curious George, or at the time, Baby Einstein was big. Why not use that time to teach kids a foreign language? So when we got this bit of traction, and by then I was pregnant with my second child, and I was working at nights and mornings and weekends on the business and holding down this full-time job, I thought, this is not sustainable. I've got to figure out a way to do this full-time. So I sat down with a friend of the family who ran a hedge fund. And I thought, well, he's in the business world. He'll know where to orient me. And I told him, John, I've had this traction. This is my vision. I really want to make this the language teaching method that helps parents teach their kids a foreign language to sell all over the world. And he said, well, how much do you need? As a former filmmaker, I had a budget. I was very used to budgets, although I hadn't had much experience with financials of any other kind. So I pulled out my budget and I walked him through it. It was marketing, it was staff, it was money to make more videos. We only had 3 at the time in 3 languages. We wanted to expand. And I said, it'll be about $1 million to make all that happen? And he said, I can help you find $1 million. It's not what I was expecting him to say. I thought he was going to say there are small business loans or you have to jump through these hoops, but he had those connections. So I was hoping he meant, we'll just write you $1 million check. It turns out it wasn't quite like that. It was more that he would make a series of introductions. And I spent the next 6 months meeting with angel investors and pitching my idea and raising money in $50, $75, $100, $200,000 chunks. But over the course of the next few months, we did raise about half of that. I quit my day job. I went full-time at Little Pim and started becoming an entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur, where I was doing sales and marketing and building the product. We created 3 more DVDs. We expanded to have up to, I think we were 10 languages perhaps by then. And it was great, but it was also exhausting. So 4 years went by that way, working so hard, loving the product creation, interacting with our customers, feeling like we're having such a big impact. We got great reviews. We worked with mommy bloggers. We got into Barnes & Noble nationwide. We were able to get into about 600 specialty stores, so bookstores, toy stores, places like that. And that was just hand-to-hand combat. Just getting into these stores, trying to get shelf space was so difficult, but made all that happen. And in the meantime, we were growing, but it wasn't doing that hockey stick thing that I had put in my business proposal, and that we all put in our business proposals. I was like, when did we get to do that? We were just still kind of here. So, we'd had like 50% growth and 30% growth, organic growth, which is all fine and well. But I was really getting exhausted. And in the meanwhile, one of our distributors, our main distributor actually, filed for Chapter 11, went out of business, and took $120,000 of our money with him down the tubes. I had been the one to sign the agreement that didn't properly protect us. I felt terrible. And it was looking dire. There were bills piling up. It was more than what we had in the bank account. And I sort of woke up one morning and went into my office and kind of looked around at the 600 square feet and my 2 employees and the 3 interns and thought, how did I get to be a 42-year-old mother of 2 running a startup? That's just not what I envisioned. And at the same time, was very aware that this was my dream. I wanted to help parents teach their kids a second language. I had raised over $1 million from friends and family, and I felt very beholden to them and wanted to give them a great return on their investment. But I was also just bone tired. And I started thinking, maybe I'm not the right person for this job. I don't have a financial background. I'm not really a CEO. Maybe we need to bring in like a real CEO, someone who can really get that hockey stick thing to happen. And I started thinking very dark thoughts about selling the business, potentially. I thought, well, we've got the method. Maybe somebody else can take it there. And it made me very sad, and it was very scary to have those feelings after so many years of investing in this dream. Around that same time, my cousin in New York, who also, I grew up in New York, he grew up in New York. I came to Yale, he went to Harvard, he started a business a few years earlier than I started a business. Right around that time, he sold his business for $360 million to a large media conglomerate. It's a nice exit. He had to work a few years, do an earnout, but basically he was pretty set. So the family was all a-Twitter with that. I hadn't seen him in many years. I was just so focused on my business and raising my children. There were a lot of people I didn't see during those years. But I thought, wow, he must have figured something out. And more than one family member said, maybe you should call him. We'll call him Justin. Call Justin. So I didn't want to. I was too proud. But eventually I thought, well, if I'm going to have to shut down this business that I'm so passionate about and disappoint all these people, I might as well have a huge slice of humble pie before I do it. So I emailed Justin and I said, congratulations, and would you come talk to me about my business because I'm considering selling it and I'd love your opinion. Try to help me figure out what this is all worth. Very hard email to write. Justin was very gracious. I hadn't seen him in maybe 10 years, but he came to my office. It was a very hot August day in 2011. Our air conditioner was only working so it was probably 95 outside and 84 inside my office. And he came in like a crisp blue shirt, probably just like straight out of a meeting at AOL Time Warner Center or something. And we sat at my little conference table in the middle of the room from IKEA that had a lot of those coffee stains, And we were 3 people, and everyone was just working like mad. And we couldn't meet anywhere else, really, because I didn't have a conference room, unless you count the stairwell where I had taken all my private calls for the last 4 years. So we hunkered down at this conference room in the middle of the room, and he asked me a lot of questions. He said, what are your cost of goods? And what are your distribution channels? What are your gross margin in each of those channels? And most of these questions I could answer, and many of them I couldn't. My part-time accountant was not in that day, so I had no one to ask if I didn't understand or know what the answer was, but I did my best. And at the end of hearing about how our business ran and understanding better the product, he said, you shouldn't sell this business. You've built an incredible platform here. This is just the beginning. What you should do is go raise venture capital and scale this up. And when he said venture capital, like a chill ran down my spine. It's just like, oh, not those guys. I dealt with those guys a little bit when I was a nonprofit fundraiser. I still remember one time I took the train to Greenwich, Connecticut, and got off and went to this very fancy office and waited in a glass conference room or reception area for an hour and 15 minutes to be seen. And finally, he brought me in, and he sat me down, and he looked at his watch, and he said, you have 11 minutes. Go. That's what I thought of when I thought of venture capitalists. I thought, these guys are not going to want to hear about my product made for moms to help them teach their kids a second language. I'm a mother. I got into this because I care about language teaching. We don't speak the same language, those people and I. And they're going to ask me finance questions that are even harder than the ones you're asking me today. Please don't make me do that. That was really my feeling, was what else? What else have you got? That one's not going to work, but hopefully you have something else up your sleeve. But he also said something else. He said, it took me 10 years to build my business to become an overnight success story. 10 years he was at it. I was in year 4, and it felt like an eternity, like I had always been selling and pushing and grinding away at this company. But maybe 4 years wasn't that long in the end. We had spent 2 years making it. I mentioned how important it was to me that it be a very robust system that could sell for years and years, so we had spent a full 2 years developing the program. So I had been in it for 6 years already. And that gave me pause, and then I thought about it over the next few days. And I realized that I still loved this business. I just didn't love running it like a startup. And that I also didn't think that we could take it into its next phase with this set of people, this kind of capital. The world was changing, the way kids consume media was changing. We had some digital offerings, but not everything was digital, and I knew that we had to really shift the company to become a fully digital company if we were going to continue to have success and be relevant in the next 10, 20, 50 years. So I decided I would go raise venture capital. And Justin was very helpful and supportive. He said, look, I know lots of people who've done it. I can make introductions. It won't be that different from the angel capital you've raised. I'd raised $3 million already by then in angel capital, so figured how much harder could it be? At the same time, I'd never met anyone who raised venture capital. I certainly didn't know any women entrepreneurs who'd ever raised venture capital, and it all felt very intimidating. So I tried to find something to make it feel a little less intimidating, and what I found was the idea of learning to speak VC like it was a second language. I'd always loved learning new languages, and I come from this language teaching family, so that's something I'd done many times. When I was living in France, I went to Germany for a summer. I took German classes in the morning, learned about 30 words a day, and in the evening I would go to a bar and recombine them over beers and thought that was really fun. Well, why couldn't speaking VC be like that? So I started doing research. I read books, I watched videos on YouTube, I watched Shark Tank, I talked to CEOs, I just talked to anybody I could about what were VCs going to ask me. And I sought to become conversational in VC. That was my goal. So I learned about liquidation preferences and discounts and tranches and how to talk about my gross margins and what's the difference between margins and gross margins, and just really got a great overview. But that wasn't enough. Because the other thing I learned when I watched the videos and talked to the CEOs and to people who had raised venture capital is that you had to paint a really big picture, and you had to be incredibly confident around the outcome that you were promising. And I had a lot of fears around the outcome. There were things I thought we could do in the world, but what if we couldn't do them? What if it didn't work? What if these projections, we never got there? There was just a lot of negative chatter in my brain, including, can I really take it there? Already, I was nervous that I didn't have a business background, and now I was going to get up in front of all these business people and convince them to invest millions of dollars with me. So I was really torn up about that and thought, I know I can't project that confidence that I need to project if I don't feel it. They'll be able to read through that. And I was riding the subway one day in New York, and I saw this ad for mini storage. If you've ever lived in Manhattan, anyone ever live in Manhattan? Okay, so not a lot of space in Manhattan. Storage is a very good business to be in. No one has enough room. And all of a sudden I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all those limiting beliefs about I'm not the right person, and I don't know finances, and I'm not a real CEO. I'm going to go find a mini storage in like New Jersey, not too far away, just maybe over the bridge. And I'm going to put it in a big room, and I'm going to pull down one of those steel vault doors and lock it and just leave them there. Because here I was in my early 40s. I didn't think I could just magically become the most confident person alive and not think about all those things that had been going through my head. But you know what? I could leave them where they wouldn't bug me for a little while. And I felt so much lighter. So I did that. I put those limiting beliefs away. And has anyone ever used mini storage? Ever used mini storage? What usually happens when people put things in mini storage? They never go back. So that's what happened with mine. I always thought, you know, I can go back. If it turns out that that's actually a better way to be in the world, to have all these limiting beliefs, I can always go pick them up. Haven't gone. So I set out to fundraise, and now that I'd gotten rid of these limiting beliefs, there was suddenly just a lot more space and energy in my life to learn the things I needed to know. I knew I needed to learn about finance. I needed to learn about why do VCs invest in some companies and not others? How do you give a fantastic pitch? What should my deck look like? What does success look like? I need to really ace this. And like a good Yaley, I did all my preparation. I spent months and months studying this. And I also pulled in a lot of people to help. I had lived in Paris for 7 years. I think I mentioned that earlier. And the two monuments I always think about when I think about Paris are the Eiffel Tower and Notre Dame. Has anyone been to Paris? Do you know Eiffel Tower and Notre Dame? All right. So the Notre Dame meant a lot to me because the 7 years I lived in Paris, I rode a bicycle everywhere, and I used to ride in front of Notre Dame a lot. And it was so gorgeous. And at one point, it dawned on me when I was getting ready to raise venture capital that no one ever walks away from Notre Dame saying, what a gorgeous cathedral. It's really too bad that she needs all those flying buttresses to hold her up. Did you ever think that, walking away from Notre Dame? I never did. But it turns out there are 28 flying buttresses holding up Notre Dame. If you go around the back, 28 flying buttresses. And suddenly I thought, I don't have to be the Eiffel Tower. I don't have to be this big, steely, solo structure. I can be me, and I can find my flying buttresses. And that is how I will be successful. I called up an old friend from Yale who had sold his company for $3 billion to Google and sat down and took him out for coffee and said, how does all this work? And he explained, you want to get into a bidding war, and you want to do this, and you want to do that. Many of those things didn't actually happen for me, but he gave me a great overview of what was to be done. I also hired a public speaking coach. I was planning on just talking. I thought, well, I like to talk. I'm a good communicator. Turns out there are skills you need to go pitch and raise VC. I was reading Steve Jobs' bio right around that time. Has anyone read Steve Jobs' bio by Walter Isaacson? Amazing, amazing tale of how he did what he did. And the part that jumped out at me was when it explained that right up until his final presentation, he used a public speaking coach, always. And I thought, well, gosh, if Steve Jobs, who's thought of as one of the top presenters in the world, uses a public speaking coach, why am I too good for that? Found a public speaking coach. And so through all of these efforts and pitching about 30 times, I had read that some people pitch up to 200 times, so I was sort of ready to go in for the long haul. Got a lot of no's, as everyone does, but I had had some experience with no's from my fundraising days, so that wasn't too hard to take. And I found my VCs, and I raised $2 million for my company. And that felt great. I had about 10 days of just euphoria. And then reality set in that I was just really trading one set of problems for another. But it was a good set of problems, and I was able to hire professional staff, ramp up our marketing, create an entire digital suite of products that we're still selling today, and really position the company for the kind of success that I knew was possible. But we're not here to talk about success, so let's back up. I got through that eye of the needle of raising venture capital, and I was, pretty spent, but pretty elated, and I thought, now I get why so few women raise venture capital. I had read these statistics along the way that only 4% of venture capital was invested in women-run companies. Now it's up to about 7%, but it's a pretty small number. And I had also heard that women tend to run smaller companies and that only 1.8% of women entrepreneurs run businesses that earn over $1 million in revenues. Those numbers are related. 1.8% of women-run companies earn over $1 million in revenues. About 98% of women-run companies have 0 employees and cap out at about 250,000. Now, as far as I could see, I told you I don't have a big finance background, but there had to be some relationship between these two sets of numbers. As it turns out, after a little research, men start their companies with 6 times more capital than women do. And women are twice as likely to shut down their companies because they run out of cash. So the experience I had was not unique, of almost throwing in the towel. Happily, it went another way. So I decided that this was ridiculous. I had just read Lean In. Sheryl Sandberg talked about how we had capped out at 20% of leadership. I thought, well, we're only at 4% over here. So I decided to start teaching women how to raise angel and venture capital so that they wouldn't have to go through the 9 months of research and talking to CEOs and the things I had done. And there was no other way to do it. There had been a quick way. Trust me, as a working mother of 2 kids, I would have found it, but there was no quick way. So I started a little academy called the Doubledigit Academy to get those numbers up into the double digits in my lifetime, and started teaching 8 women at a time in my conference room, did the class quarterly, brought in my public speaking coach, brought in guest angels, guest VCs, so that they would have a chance to practice pitch and ask questions, paired the women with each other as accountability partners so that they would have someone to go on this fundraising journey with. And now, 2 years later, this is hosted at Morgan Stanley, and we've trained over 60 women to raise angel and venture capital. And I feel really good about that. So, what I want to leave you with today is the idea that if you come across something in your life that you really, really want, but you're not sure how to get there, please ask yourself if you have a limiting belief that might be stopping you from going after it. People only change when they're in pain. No one likes change. Only cashiers like change, right? They don't like change. I was in a lot of pain. I had this dream, I had this vision. I quit my great paying job as a fundraiser to go after this company. I wanted to help parents all over the world teach their kids a foreign language, help young children be global citizens. But it almost all fell apart, and I was going to let down investors, friends, my employees whose families were counting on them, and myself. So I decided to go outside of my comfort zone and make it happen. One of my coaches, one of my flying buttresses, Gina Malacone-Long, likes to say that you can't cross an 8-foot chasm in 2 4-foot leaps. I could have stayed on that entrepreneur's hamster wheel, running, but it was not going to get me there. I had to figure out another way across that 8-foot chasm. So if you have something you really want to do, and it could be starting a business, but it could be taking a trip around the world. It could be proposing to this amazing man or woman. It could be anything that you're not quite sure you can make it happen. I would encourage you to question if you have limiting beliefs holding you back. Put those in mini storage, somewhere under a really great steel door, and then go outside your comfort zone and find your flying buttresses, because they will help you get there. Because it's not just for entrepreneurs. The most successful people in life are the ones who fail and get up and keep going. And many of you already know how to do that. That's why you're here. And if you don't already know how to do it, it can be learned. Thank you so much for having me. I want to share with you a little slide. Hannah, will you throw this slide up? So I was on my way here this morning, and I stopped by my son's 4th grade class, Emmett, the one I created Little Pim for. And up on the wall were these amazing drawings. His teacher said, we're teaching them about persistence. And this is what was on the wall, so I wanted to share it with you. Michael Jordan, I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeeded. Drawn by a 4th grader. I love that. I often use the quote by Thomas Edison, I failed my way to success, but I like this better now. So I want to answer some questions. We can leave that up. I'd like to answer your questions. I really hope they're going to feed you soon, because otherwise it's going to get ugly in here. As a mom, I usually have some snacks in my bag, but I don't think I do today. If anyone wants goldfish, I could bring them out. So let me answer some questions. And then I also brought with me today my pitch deck, which so many people helped me build and perfect. And I brought it with me just because I thought you might be interested in seeing a pitch deck. We could walk through it quickly. Does that interest folks to see that? Great. Okay, so a few minutes of Q&A and then the pitch deck? Okay, let's do that. Who'd like to start? Yes.
Hi, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm curious how much your idea itself changed from when you first had it until where it is now, like the actual, how the business would function.
Mm-hmm. The business side or the creative side? Because for me, they're a little different. The creative side, sure. Absolutely. So because I had been a documentary filmmaker, I did know how media worked, and I knew that DVDs were just sort of a stop on the road of distribution. So I did conceive it to be sold the way it's being sold today, which is digital downloads. It's in 5-minute episodes for easy downloading and streaming. It's all shot for the small screen. So even though those things didn't matter for the first 4 years we were selling as DVDs, they matter a whole lot now. In terms of the method, we have the entertainment immersion method that I developed with leading educators and a neuroscientist and a lot of focus groups and whatnot. That has not changed. I will also add in, though, that over 5 years of selling, we kept hearing from parents, we love that little Maggie is learning French, but what exactly is she learning? We don't know what's going on when she's learning. They learn 360 words and phrases when they do the whole series, the 6 DVDs or the 6 videos. But we decided to create a progress tracking app, and this is a change. This is something I did not conceive of at the beginning. It came from listening to our customers. We survey them twice a year. So how do you use Little Pim? What would you like to see different? What's working? What's not? And this is some of the feedback that we got. So we created this progress tracking app that you can all download for free in the iTunes store if you have Apple products. We don't have the Android version yet. And it allows parents to quiz their kids on what they've learned and to work on it with them. It has the audio built in, so if you don't know how to say, cheese in Chinese, you don't have to know how to say cheese in Chinese because it's right in there. You can press the button. And that allows parents to see how far along the kids are. It has a progress tracking bar. So once they get it right, they click it off as learned, and then they know how far along they are. And then, of course, we built in a little bit of an upsell where if they've gotten them all right, then you can click right through to the iTunes store and buy the next video. Sure. Yes?
So how is it like being an entrepreneur and having 2 kids? How do you keep balance between work and life?
I love it. I really love it. I think entrepreneurship is a great choice for women who want to have children and want to be involved in their children's lives because you have so much mobility. You have the ability to choose when and how and where you work. And I value that so much. I like to joke that entrepreneurs are willing to work 23 hours of every day, but they want to pick which 23. And that's very much my case. When my second son was born, I remember I would, wake up in the middle of the night to breastfeed, and it's like, oh, well, I'm awake, I can work for an hour, so you can get so much done. And my children have been part of my entrepreneurial journey from the beginning. I remember when Emmett, who's now 10, was about 3, and we were having family dinner, and my husband worked at a nonprofit at the time called the JCP. And Emmett piped up at dinner one night, and he said, Dad, you work at the JCP, and Mom and we do Little Pim. was very sweet, and it made me very happy because he's always seen that as our family business. He's very proud of it. He is in the videos. Actually, both my children are in the videos, and they come to shoots. He would help me check subtitles. I would teach him how to, all right, if it comes up later when they said the word, we've got to move it. So it's really just about making it all work. I know that when I was in my 20s and talking to women who were, 10, 15, 20 years down the line from me, I heard women say a lot, when I'm at work, I feel like I should be at home. And when I'm at home, I feel like I should be at work. And it's just, you can't win. And I always thought, I am never going to be one of those women. That's not how my life is going to be. And it's really not. I mean, I do something I love. When I'm at work, I love it. And when I come home at the end of the day and get to play Legos on the floor with Adrian, I love that too. Yes?
Yeah, you mentioned your struggle to raise capital in 2008, I think, and you used a couple of $1 million. Is that correct?
That was my Series A, was $1 million. I had a Series B that was another $1 million.
Okay. So you mentioned you met your cousin who just sold his business for $360 million.
Yes.
And that Yale friend who sold his business for
$3 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Did you try raising money through them, or did it just not believe in your business and it say no, I don't want to invest?
Oh, you mean them personally? So my cousin Justin not only put money into my business, he's now on my board, and he's soon to be, probably even more involved. Perhaps board chair or something like that. And the other friend stayed involved as an advisor. He wasn't yet investing then, but he made a lot of good introductions.
Okay. Could they not have offloaded you from the venture capital experience and funding your business directly?
Well, I think a misconception many of us have, and I don't know if this is what you're implying, is that people who've sold their business are now like so flush that they can do anything they want. Like in Justin's case, he had a 4-year earnout. So I'm sure some big piece of that money fell when he sold, but he also had 3 business partners, a 4-year earnout. He also started building a big place in the Hamptons. So, the money was tied up. That's been a real interesting learning curve for me as a fundraiser, both nonprofit and for-profit, is that you just can never make assumptions about people's finances, how much is liquid, what's available. The best indicator of whether someone can write you a check is how big is the last check they wrote to someone else. Right? Because you can have someone who's Warren Buffett rich, but has never ever funded a startup or written a philanthropic check. And they're probably not going to do it. So it's an interesting thing. Yes, please.
First, I like your website. I've been on it just a few minutes and it's already offering me 15% off.
Oh, good. Take it.
I have the option to pay full price if I want. But,
Glad. Thank you.
I've heard many stories like that. Running out of cash is definitely right up there on the top reasons why startups fail. And then another reason is team. And venture capitalists seem very picky. Like when raising capital, like what's your team? How did you find your co-founders, if any? Do you ever get that question asked?
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes, so critical to my success in raising venture capital was some of the advisors I pulled on, like the friend from Yale, but also I found a top senior VP of sales and marketing whom I could not afford to hire. But I was just very straight up with her. I said, I'm raising this money. As soon as I've raised the money, I would love to bring you on full time. But how about you work with us as a consultant and let's start getting that nice ramp up of sales. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made. She came on board as a consultant. She knew the deal. We had a timeline worked out, and it was a several-month timeline. It was like 6 months. But that gave me an incredible team member to be able to talk about during my pitches, and it made our revenues start increasing. So right when I was out pitching, we could say, wow, our direct-to-consumer sales just jumped up by 40%, in part because we have this amazing person, and if you make this investment, we'll be able to keep her on full time. So thank you for bringing that up. Very important piece of the puzzle. Yes?
Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
Which aspect do you spend the most time, effort in? Or is it like development of products or marketing or
Currently.
daily?
Currently, what do I spend the most time on?
Like from the beginning to now.
From the beginning to now? Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, in the beginning, I think I was really drawing on my strengths as a creative person and doing a lot of product development. I've also always loved the marketing. So one, I am my target demographic, so that made it easy to be thinking about, well, what's this mom doing? So I did a lot of work around the marketing. We also, I love to write. So I worked with mommy bloggers, and I wrote articles and spoke on panels about bilingual education. But over time, I fit more the definition that Fred Wilson talks about, the VC. I don't know if any of you have read his blog. He's the CEO of Union Square Ventures, in New York. Big investors in Twitter, big investors in Foursquare, one of the most successful VCs in the country. And he is famous for saying a CEO should do three things. They should set the strategy, hire the best people, and keep the money in the bank. And that's it. That's what the CEO should be doing. And the further along I get, I'm now in the 7th year of running my business, I think he's dead on. Because everything else can be outsourced, but those three things you have to get right. Yes?
Where do you see Little Pim in the next 5 years?
Well, we are actually starting a whole new business right now, which is very exciting. We've been selling direct to consumer for the last 6-7 years, and that's still going strong. But we just got a big opportunity in the early learning center space. So, the food's here, yeah. And I can show you the pitch deck while you have your lunch. So we had something happen that almost never happens in the business world. I talked about the hand-to-hand combat, getting into the individual specialty stores. It was like, calling them and sending them stuff and going to visit, and it would take months and months and months. November 2013, just a few months ago, we got a call from a daycare center in the US. It was one of the largest, most successful daycare centers. And they said, we're hearing from our parents that they would like to have their kids learning languages at daycare. And we don't know how to do that. And all roads led to you. Everyone said we should call you, so we're calling. It was one of these amazing inbound calls. So we set to work creating the first method to teach kids at daycare a second language. We knew it couldn't be our existing method because our existing method is so video-based, and you probably don't have to be a parent to understand that if you're paying all this money to send your child to daycare, you don't want them sitting in front of a TV or a tablet or an iPad or any of those things they do at home. So we turned it into a curriculum where just about 5 or 10 minutes of each half-an-hour lesson was video. We use the video as a springboard, and then we have all these great interactive games and activities and songs. And we're now talking with 6 of the top early learning center chains in the country, 2 others of whom called us as well, just because we're sort of the only big player in this space, so that's turning out to be a real advantage. And we're busy building out this new B2B business within our business. So that's a piece of where we'll be in the next 5 years, and much, much more digital. We already are seeing 50% of our purchases are digital. I'm sure to you all, because of your age demographic, you would think, why aren't 100% of your purchases digital? But people are still buying DVDs, believe it or not. We keep waiting for it to drop entirely off the cliff, but it hasn't happened. But in 2015, I think we'll probably move to fully digital. We're also coming out with Korean this year that we're very excited about. That's in production right now, so that'll be our 13th language. And we're hoping to really expand our international footprint. There's so much opportunity internationally, but really big barriers to entry in a lot of the markets that we really want to be in. China, number 1. Brazil is another really hot market, but just very complicated as a small independent company to go into those countries and not have people steal your IP or sell it with margins that don't make any sense. So we're navigating all of that. We are in 22 countries currently. But a lot of that is physical distribution. We're sending over DVDs, flashcards, books. We want to flip that and make it digital. And if anyone has thoughts, connections, ideas, please come see me after, because we're just solving as we go. Thanks for asking. Yes?
So I'm curious about your work with other female entrepreneurs. There's a lot of research around women and confidence and how that can be a huge barrier to just getting what you want, like you said. And
Yes.
I'm wondering if you encountered that with other women entrepreneurs and how kind of you can help them work through that barrier.
Yes, we talk about that a lot in the Doubledigit Academy. I think it's changing. I think that women now are coming into the entrepreneurial space realizing that they have some advantages that they might not have had even 5 or 10 years ago. For one, the numbers are increasing. So women are starting businesses at twice the rate that men are right now. So we're seeing an explosion of women in entrepreneurship. It's a very exciting time to be a woman entrepreneur. And we're also seeing women working in slightly different ways than men did. I know that when I started my company, I had a lot of potential investors who said, well, are you just going to set up a cot under your desk and sleep there until this thing is worth, $20 million? And I was like, no, I'm actually not. I have 2 kids, and I'm going to run this like a successful business where we're going to work smart and hard, but not long. So we're seeing really different modes of leadership coming up now with women. And the other piece of it is from talking to a lot of angels and VCs, they said to me that they find some of the best women entrepreneurs are the domain experts. And so there are a lot of women who worked many years in a certain domain and have a lot of expertise. And then when they start their company, are really incredible resources of information and knowledge, and that's a real confidence booster. So I think the challenge these days for women is to just realize some of the advantages that we have and play them up. You can get very bogged down in all the bad news, right, when you open the paper or open your tablet and see that, only 7% of venture capital goes to women and women run out of money and they're running these tiny businesses. But the truth is that's all changing at lightning speed. So I think it's a great time to be a woman entrepreneur. Thanks for asking. Yes?
You're clearly very passionate about empowering female entrepreneurs, but I notice when you talk about your customers, you talk about moms.
Yes.
Mommies. And I'm curious how you see that dynamic in empowering dads to be playing that role.
Yes.
And how it ties into empowering.
We do sell to dads. We take their money. The statistics show that mothers do 85% of purchasing of all educational products for children. So while we have worked with, Geek Dad on Wired Magazine and the Diaper Dude, who's this dad who made these cool diaper bags, we've done little forays into the dad marketing world. But really we focus all of our marketing dollars on moms just because of those numbers. Now that might be shifting slightly, and I certainly in my own family and in other families, I see a much more equitable division of labor around housework, child rearing, etc. But we're not seeing the stats change on who's doing the purchasing. So with limited marketing dollars, we just are focused on the moms and figure it'll have halo effect on the dads. But it's a great question. All right, so why don't I just give you my little pitch? This is what I used to do over and over again. I might be a little rusty, but the other interesting thing about pitching is that sometimes they give you 10 minutes, sometimes they give you 3 minutes. I was once invited to a round table at Forbes where they give us 1 minute. So you really have to be flexible in how you deliver the pitch. So here we go. So, hello, I'm Julia Pimsleur, the founder and CEO of Little Pim. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background before I get started. I am the daughter of Dr. Paul Pimsleur, who created the Pimsleur method for teaching foreign languages to adults. It's an at-home learning method sold all over the world in its 50th anniversary. And I created Little Pim for my own son. I'm going to skip that story because you know it already. So that's where I would always start is why me, why now, and what's my passion connection to this project. So there's been a lot of coverage of the importance of young children learning a second language. If you look at the top 25 industrialized countries, there are only 5 that are not teaching young children a second language before the age of 6, and the US is one of those 5. Parents know that this is a real Achilles heel for their kids on the global stage, and more parents want to start teaching their children a second language before the age of 6. They won't get it in school until middle school, and by then it's really way too late. So we created Little Pim to make it very easy and accessible for all parents to become their children's first language tutors. We want to just meet children where they're at, and since kids love to watch screens, we created a video series so that parents can just replace a little bit of TV time with Little Pim time. And in the meanwhile, the kids are learning 360 words and phrases in a second language. It's a very exciting time to be at the cross-section of education and digital media, learning tools. We're sitting right in this sweet spot in between the language learning market and the toy and consumer market. And of course, there are 4.2 million babies born in the US every year. So even just at home, we have 24 million moms that we can sell to at any given time. And that's without scratching the surface of the international market. Let's look at the competition a little bit, who's out there. None of the companies teaching a foreign language have a children's method. We have the only proprietary method to teach young children a second language. Rosetta Stone starts around age 6. There is a company that's been around since 1982 called Muzzy. They market their product as, for 1 to 12 or 4 to 12, depending on which materials you get your hands on. and it's really not designed for very young children. It has a main character who's a little bit scary. It's a green monster with red eyes, and the content is not appropriate for very young children. So we created our series specifically designed for very young children to learn. We teach with our entertainment immersion method 360 words and phrases. You only need 500 words and phrases to be conversational in a second language, so it really gets kids pretty far along. We also have designed it so that it's very easy to scale up, to add new languages, and it can be seen on any screen, any size, anywhere, all over the world, because it's an MP4 file and it's very easy to download. We're in 3 main channels. We sell in stores, mom and pop, gift and toy stores, but also big chains like Barnes & Noble, Toys R Us. We also have many licensing deals. We have a very deep relationship with Leapfrog, which is the leader in educational tech. We are their foreign language teaching partner. We're on VTech devices. We're on the Nook. We're on the Kindle, of course, on the iPhone and iPads. And we also do about 30% of our sales direct to consumer. So we sell both physical and digital products through our website. What did I used to say about that? That we had nice growth year over year from 2012 to 2013. We were at almost 85% growth. A lot of that was in the retail category, where we had gotten some big deals, national deals, to be at Toys R Us nationwide, and also a lot of success online with companies like diapers.com, which sell a large volume of our products. So looking out towards the future, we are looking to be at 25 million by 2017 with an EBITDA of about 14 million. We think this is very achievable, in part because if you look at some of the leaders in the language teaching space, like Rosetta Stone, they're at 250 million annually. It's a really big market, and we haven't even scraped the surface yet of the international distribution. So we're very confident about these numbers. With the this was a little mini raise we were doing towards the end. So when I got to the end of my Series C, we had to tack on another 600, partly because of the daycare opportunity that fell in our lap. So our use of funds is we're going to be expanding our marketing footprint. We're going to be creating new digital products. We have a progress tracking app that we're working on that allows parents to see what their kids are learning, get much more involved in their learning process. We're expanding internationally into countries where there's a big ESL market, such as China and Brazil and Korea. And then we also are going after a whole new market, which is the early learning center market, where we're already talking to one of the biggest chains and going after some of the others. That's a very exciting market because it was rolled up by private equity a few years ago. So while it used to be a very disaggregated market, now there's just about 10 major players. So it's pretty easy to go after those and get some big multi-million-dollar deals. What was this? International. I like the quote. I forgot about that. So, right, that's right. So in the US, parents are increasingly introducing their kids to a second language, but abroad, parents have always introduced their children to a second language. Our strategy has always been build a big brand here, and once we have that nice brand recognition, then go abroad. We have put our toe into 22 markets just to make sure the brand resonates there, so we're selling physical product in 22 countries, but now we want to flip that to digital sales, and we'll be working on our strategy to get into some of these key markets and expand that growth. In terms of the daycare market, there's so much potential there. One thing that's exciting about it is that we can license our product so that it streams right into the early learning centers, whether it's Bright Horizons or Goddard or KinderCare. They're all going digital now, putting smart boards in the classrooms, and this product is perfectly suited to roll out as a license to all these daycare centers. So we see a lot of opportunity there, and they're coming to us, which is always a good position to be in. This is our team. We have some heavy hitters from the retail and toy world. So Allison Shapiro used to be at Sony and at Kids Bop and at Warner Music. She has deep experience with retail. She also worked with franchises when she was at the School of Rock. She helped build out their program for young children. We have advisors who are very actively involved, who are successful entrepreneurs like David Rosenblatt. And also on our board, we have Josh Reibel, who is the CEO of Amplify Learning, and that was sold to News Corp a few years ago for $360 million. This is the team, the Little Pim team. We believe in keeping our overhead small and working with the best in class of partners. So whenever we build a new product, we partner with people on the outside. We don't believe in building up a really big infrastructure. So we've kept our team light. We actually got to $1 million with only 3 people. So this strategy has been working so far. And I'm really lucky to be surrounded by amazing, hardworking, talented, fun people. We have a lot of opportunities for acquisition in spaces as far-ranging as publishing, to toys, to media acquirers. So we'll see who the right partner is in a few years. Right now, we're really focused on top-line growth and being able to build out this new product in the early learning center space and grow internationally. But when the time is right, we're confident that we'll have many potential partners. And this is just a little more detail about the opportunity. This is a pretty low-risk investment. We're pretty far along in our company and are just looking for growth capital to really take it to the next level and expand into new markets so that we can help more children learn languages around the world. We do see ourselves as a double bottom-line company, so we are very focused on revenues and on producing a very high return for all of our investors, but we also take really seriously our mission to transform how young children are learning second languages, and we are democratizing access to language learning for kids around the world. We have a deep partnership with 1 laptop per child, which is out of MIT, and they've provided computers to 3 million children in developing countries with Little Pim English preloaded onto it. So there are 3 million kids learning English in Africa and in parts of South America, and we're really proud of that partnership. I hope you'll join us for this big opportunity, and thank you for listening.